right, thank you so much, Adria, and thank you so much, the Smart Nation team, for all of your support and for inviting us for this event. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us during your lunchtime. Really appreciate that. And yeah, hopefully you'll be able to learn a lot from this session. So my name is Hu, and I'm the marketing manager for General Assembly. So I lead all marketing activities for General Assembly in Singapore. Jonathan, do you mind moving to the next slide? Yeah, so if you are all here, I hope that you have known General Assembly from one way or another. But in case you have heard of us for the first time, we are a global tech education company, and we focus on helping people to reskill and upskill themselves in the most in-demand tech skills. So of course, UX design being one of them, but we also do offer courses, workshops, and assessments in the whole host of other fundamental pillars of digital change. So things like data, coding, digital marketing, cyber, and product management. Right, so moving on, just in terms of some numbers, I think I also always like to look at this slide just to see how far and how wide we have come. So we are around 10 years old this year as an organization, but we have already more than 30 global campuses worldwide. So you can see all of the red dots over there are where we currently are at the moment. We have already had more than 70,000 course alumni. So this refers to people who have taken our full-time and part-time courses to either make a career switch or to upgrade their career. We also have more than 5,000 workshop attendees. So these refer to the shorter workshops that are usually around 2.5 hours to 6-hour bootcamp, meant for you to just quickly pick up a skills that you need for whatever your current job is asking of you, and take a workshop with us. And we also have more than 20,000 expert instructors, one of whom you'll be meeting later, Jonathan. They are the ones who really are the heroes behind all of our great courses. They are really the ones who bring in their industry experience and share where they are and how they get there with us. Right, so maybe some numbers for GA Singapore alone. So GA in itself is 10 years old, but GA in Singapore was established in mid-2015. But already we have more than 1,000 immersive. So immersive refers to the full-time, and then there's also part-time graduates. We have more than 5,000 workshop participants, but we also do have more than 40,000 community event participants. So one of the things that I haven't mentioned earlier on is that we also do have a lot of free community events on a weekly basis. These are all, of course, completely free for you to learn more about tech, what's happening, what are the skills that you need, and how can you break into tech itself. We also have very strong partnership with a lot of stakeholders in Singapore. So IMDA being one of them. So IMDA is the Infocom Media Development Authority. We also have very strong relationships with employers and also the tech community in general. Right, so in terms of what we offer, if we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so we do offer, as I mentioned, a lot of career transformation courses. So all of them are very industry focused. What do we mean by industry focused? That means that all of the courses do cover what the industry is currently practicing, and our instructors are also industry practitioners themselves. They have been working on this. They have been working on this day in, day out, so they can share very up-to-date information and skills with our learners, so to make sure that they have a great student experience and also access to a global alumni network. But if you prefer to join us in our events and workshops, we also do have a lot of events and workshops on a weekly basis, if in case you are not really keen on a full-blown courses just yet. All right, and I think that's all from me at this point. I also leave our contacts over here, which I will also drop in the chat later on. So if you have any other questions, or if you're keen to find out how you can break into tech, you can drop us a note at Singapore_admissions@ga.co, and one of our admission producer will be sure to get back to you. But also a shameless plug to please follow us on our social media platforms. So we post about other great community events and workshops that is happening at GA Singapore itself. And that will be all from me for now. I will pass on over the time to Jonathan, our instructor for the webinar today, to bring you through Intro to UX Design. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Hung, and thank you, Adria, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan, and I'll be taking you through today's introduction to user experience design. I have been a lead instructor with General Assembly Singapore since March, teaching 3 different boot camps. Previous to my family move to Singapore in 2019, I spent 2 decades working in product management, product design, and digital leadership roles as both a consultant and client. As a product designer, my experience includes user experience design, creative direction, and technical architecture for websites, mobile apps, and touchscreen kiosks. My business analyst work includes designing knowledge management systems, digital marketing ecosystems, and leading organizational transformation initiatives. From 2006 to 2012, I taught digital marketing and design thinking classes in the evenings, which allowed me to coach aspiring copywriters and art directors on their professional journeys. In 2018, I decided to explore a full-time career in the classroom, which is what led me to General Assembly. I'm really grateful to be working with a talented and diverse group of UX/DI students every quarter, which includes recent college graduates, career changers, and upskillers, as they have taught me a lot about how to keep a growth mindset, resilience, adaptability, and believing in themselves. All right. By the end of this session, we hope you will be saying one or more of the following quotes that you see on the screen. To make this session interactive, we've included polls on selected slides marked with a poll icon at the top right corner, like this one. We'll provide you with a few moments to submit your responses, and since most of you are Singaporean, and it's a question that comes up in class quite often, you will not be graded for your responses, so have fun with this. The first question we have for you is, which of these statements would you like to say by the end of class? Right? You can choose one. Right, so we'll spend a little bit of few seconds here for you to fill this out. While we're filling that out, we wanted to tell you a little bit about what we're going to cover for the next 90 minutes. Right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what is a user experience designer, what do user experience designers do on a daily basis, which skills and tools do user experience designers use in their work, and how can you become a user experience designer? As this is an introductory session, we will be working from a foundational level, discussing things from a big picture perspective. If you're interested in going deeper, you can attend one of General Assembly's workshops or join us for a future bootcamp. Right? We'll also invite you to submit your questions for a Q&A session that we will have following the presentation as well. All right, so let's see what some people put down here. All right, so a lot of you are interested in what a user experience designer does every day, as well as how you can recommend improvements for a user experience. All right, great. And Hung, you can leave that poll on for another minute or so, and then we can share the results with class just to see where everybody's at today. All right, so let's kind of get into our material here. What is a user experience designer anyway? All right, so we all instinctively know what a bad user experience looks like because we don't need a degree to spot a terrible product or service. I'd like to invite you now to look around your surroundings, as I'll bet you'll find some bad user experience design right in your view. If you don't see anything, perhaps you are familiar with one of these poorly designed user experiences in your life, or you can at least empathize with its users. Right? I don't think I really need to explain any of these photos here. Okay. Jesse James Garrett believes that user experience is a way of thinking and an approach to the design of products and services that looks beyond the design of an artifact itself to the experience it delivers to the people who use it. Right. There's definitely a lot of things being said in this quote, but really what it's saying is that user experience design is not just one thing. It's a way of thinking, which we can also call a mindset. It's an approach or process. It's the design itself. It's a physical product or artifact in this case. And most importantly, it's the experience that it delivers. Why don't we simplify this statement further and just say, good user experience solves real problems for real people. Okay. Why did we include real in front of problems and real in front of people? Before we can design a solution, we need to conduct user research so we can understand the specific frustrations and pain points that individuals have when interacting with a product or service. User experience designers like to say that when you design for everyone, you design for no one. Our job as user experience designers is to see and understand the individual so we can propose the right solution. Think about how you approach buying a birthday gift for a partner or parent versus a gift for a coworker that you've only spoken to a couple of times. We want to know our users like we know our parents and partners. Right. I noticed somebody's hand is up here with the question. Hung or Adriel, do you mind answering the question that the hand is up for? I'm not quite sure why a hand is up. Okay. All right, so before we continue, I want to talk about three different things which are unique. The word usability, the word user interface, which we also know as UI, as well as the word user experience, which we know as UX. Right? Usability and user interface are parts of the user experience, but they're not the same thing and shouldn't be used interchangeably. All right. So let's talk a little bit deeper about what these words are before we move on. Okay. So what is usability? The word usable is in the word usability, and we often talk about how usable a product or service is. Usability measures how effectively a user can accomplish a goal. In this photo of a Singapore Airlines cabin, there are many goals that riders have. Some of them want to walk down an aisle. Some of them want to find their seat. And once they find their seat, they want to place their carry-on luggage in the overhead compartment. Then they might want to sit down and fasten their seatbelts before watching a movie on their in-flight entertainment system. So when we think about usability, you can think about the entire in-cabin experience, which could be referred to as service design, or consider each of the separate goals and tasks that a customer might have. Okay. Products and services often require us to interact with various channels and touch points. These channels can include signs or wayfinding. It can include people, like flight attendants in a cabin, physical controls on overhead compartments and seatbelts, or even touchscreen controls on an in-flight entertainment system. What all of these have in common is each of these touch points has a user interface. If we were to focus on the digital experiences that SIA customers use during their in-flight journey, the user interface includes the website, where you buy tickets and choose a seat. It also can include the in-flight entertainment system. And I do want to note, although our UX/DI class focuses on digital product design, we do talk a little bit about service design basics. If user interface or UI is how something works, then user experience is how that something makes you feel before, during, and after they interact with the brand, product, or service. User experience is the emotion. And in the case of SIA, these customers feel happy and satisfied by their decision. The term user experience design was first coined by Don Norman 25 years ago, as he felt the terms human interface and usability didn't really capture how a user feels when interacting with the product or service. Don Norman is famous for co-founding IDEO and the Nielsen-Norman Group, which is considered an early pioneer in user research and user experience design. He has also written books on product design, one of which is called Emotional Design, which examines how emotion influences how we process information and our decision-making. If user experience is emotional, what do we want users to feel? For both marketing and user experience design, the goal is to surprise and delight audiences and users. Think back to how you chose a gift for your partner or parent. More than anything, you want to surprise and delight them with your decision. So what makes something delightful and valuable for users? Peter Morville created the UX Honeycomb, which you see on the right, as an answer to this question. The UX Honeycomb is a tool used to assess products and features against criteria that supports the idea of value and delight. It's a great tool for advancing the conversation beyond usability and to help people understand the need to define priorities. For instance, is it more important for your website to be desirable or accessible? Or how about usable versus credible? The truth is, depending on your balance of context, content, and users, the required trade-offs are better made explicitly than subconsciously. Okay, so let's use the UX Honeycomb framework to evaluate Craigslist, which is an online classified website that started in San Francisco in 1995. As you can tell, the design hasn't really changed much in the 25 years since its launch. This is pretty much what it looks like today. And although it doesn't look like much, we'd argue that its UX is very effective. So let's take a closer look at how user experience is more than just the sum of usability and user interface. Okay. we'd like you to take a moment to review the Craigslist screenshot and tell us which honeycomb qualities does Craigslist prioritize in its poll. Hung, do you mind moving us to the next poll that we have here? All right. So as you look at this website, we want you to think about, is it easy to use? Can you find information? Does it feel credible? Is the content accessible? Is the experience desirable or work to your expectations? And is the content useful, right? So when it comes to user experience design, as we mentioned earlier, there are trade-offs between the UX honeycomb qualities, depending on your specific situation, product, resources, and users. Okay. So here's our perspective. Craigslist is super searchable, right? You've got a button or a text field to search on the left side, and they've listed all of the categories and displayed all the different things you can do, making it easy for people to access information or search for information. And for most people who use Craigslist, they can easily find what they're looking for, right? The interface is not awesome, but it has great user experience depending on the context of who's using it. And there's no login required, so it's accessible for everyone. Right? Let's see what some of you said about Craigslist here. So in the lead here, we've got everything is findable and accessible. We've got usable and useful used as well too. Okay, so it's no mystery that it's not as desirable, right? From a design standpoint, it's lacking, right? Because it just has text. And some people don't see the value in it, okay? But perhaps that would change if some of you actually became users, right? We'll continue to the next example, all right? For contrast to Craigslist, let's take a look at a website you're all familiar with, Shopee. Whereas Craigslist had a simple user interface, Shopee features lots of colors, images, and type sizes to draw in our attention, right? So Hung, can you open the new poll? So let's take a look again at the honeycomb. I want you to think about how you would look at Shopee. Is it easy to use? Can you find information? Does it feel credible? Is the content accessible? Is the experience desirable? And is the content useful? All right, I'll give you a little bit of time to look at that. Again, it's really nice to see how many of you are using the poll. Now that I've lived in Singapore for the past couple of years, one of the differences I've noticed between Western and Asian user experience design is the idea of what is too much, or the idea of featureitis. When it comes to UX best practices, I learned that less is more, as it focuses the user's attention on a few items from which to make a decision. And when it comes to adding something new to the homepage or navigation, you should always think about taking something out. On my client projects, when brands requested adding a new navigation category to the homepage of a website, I always work with them to consider replacing something instead, so we could keep the navigation limited to a handful of categories. In Asia, I've observed that more is better. There's never too much navigation, products, promotions, vouchers, and call to actions that can be added to a homepage. Rather than seeing options, a crowded homepage makes me feel a little overwhelmed and catatonic. I'm not sure where I should start. That said, for me as a user, Shopee falls short in terms of being usable, desirable, and accessible. On sites like Shopee and Lazada, rather than scroll through all of the different products and promotions, I often find myself using the search bar at the top of the page. Okay, so let's see what some of you said about Shopee. So a lot of you say it's desirable, right? That's a big difference from Craigslist. You find everything is findable as well too. So we can see a difference in the way we consider Craigslist and Shopee, right? However, because I'm not the targeted user of Shopee, I'm not saying that more is better is not the right approach. Understanding audience needs, including cultural differences, is an important quality for user experience designers. In my class, I tell students that it's important for them to decide on their user experience philosophy. If they believe less is more, then they might want to consider working for an MNC after the program ends. Or if more is better, they should consider working for an Asian brand. Right? Aligning your UX philosophy with your employer is integral for your success and happiness in your career. All right. Now that we've clarified some terms and looked at a couple of website examples, let's take a peek at a day in the life of a UX designer. Okay. As we mentioned in our earlier SIA example, user experience design is not just about building websites and apps. It can include physical product design, from car interiors to medical devices and security screening technology. User experience designers have their hands on everything we touch and experience every day. Look around your room again, often impacting the success and failure of a product or service. When we ask prospective UX/DI students to define user experience design, they often understand it to be about what we see, the interface and visual design, which is only a small part of what makes up user experience design. This is likely because it's the most tangible piece of the process and the result of a lot of research work that happens beforehand. Okay. However, UX is more than the end result of an interface. It's also about research, brainstorming, collaboration, testing, building influence, and more. This list by Eric Flower shows all the responsibilities that a UX practitioner might do in the course of completing a project. At General Assembly, we provide our UX/DI students with a foundational understanding of each of these responsibilities, which they learn by doing over the course of 4 projects and a final capstone, which is a 3-week engagement with a startup or nonprofit to solve a real-world business challenge. Okay. Becoming a successful user experience designer requires specific skills and mindsets. Here's a few mindsets that are valuable for beginning user experience designers. Using the poll, tell us which of these quotes sounds most like you. Remember that long list of responsibilities we just shared? If you have experience with any of them, you can learn UX design. You can also learn UX design if you don't have experience with those responsibilities, but have a growth mindset and commitment to learning. As a UX/DI lead instructor, I meet each student where they're at so I can build their confidence and growth as a user experience designer throughout the course. I focus on progress, not perfection, and don't fail students unless they don't try. And really, who am I to say you failed? We're preparing you for the real world and to secure a job, not to ace an end of session test. All right, let's see at your poll results to see what you're thinking. All right. So a lot of you are okay with life being a journey, not a destination. You like to question things, right? Curiosity is a really important mindset for user experience designers. And team collaboration and team building is also another important point as well, too. What is the user experience design process? All right. So for the next 45 minutes or so, I will be sharing a design challenge and taking you through the steps to solve it. You will learn the process that user experience designers use to structure their work, along with some tips for each stage. Practicing these skills following the session will help you decide if user experience design is something that you're interested in, and you can even start by applying these learnings in the work that you do now. Okay. My instructional assistants and I came up with a design challenge last week focused on a real-world situation affecting Singapore. Right. Singapore's senior population, which we're considering to be age 65 years or older, is set to rise to 1/4 of the total population in 2030, which is less than 10 years away. In a recent Singapore Chinese health study, 6% of seniors admitted to experiencing social disconnection, which often leads to social isolation and loneliness. 6% of seniors in 2030 would be equivalent to almost 75,000 Singaporeans. It's quite a bit. The sense of disconnection can be attributed to the following factors. Physical. Social distancing has left seniors feeling isolated and alone as family and friends visit less and social events at the community centers are limited. It could also be a digital situation where seniors that lack digital literacy are unable to take care of basic needs during the pandemic, such as grocery shopping, food delivery, banking, even watching Netflix, leaving them feeling left behind while others are okay. It can also be an emotional situation where seniors feel a sense of disconnection and a lack of reliability, even when living with their families, with some feeling that they don't have someone to go to for help. Okay. So now that we've identified the problem, we need to summarize the challenge that we want to solve. How might we facilitate meaningful social connections between older and younger generations within the community? Right? And if we look at the articles on the left side here, we've got the idea of positive aging. And is graying population a silver opportunity? What can we do to help these seniors? Right? Along with helping the seniors, we want to consider how digital solutions can be used to bridge the generational gap, as well as create an opportunity for seniors to learn digital literacy, learn some basic skills. Right. So where do we start with this? Right. We have a new poll that we're going to put up here. Now that we have our challenge and we need to put ourselves in the shoes of a user experience designer, what do you think would be our first step to solve this design challenge? Do we interview older and younger generations? Do we observe how older generations spend their day? Or maybe we survey older and younger generations to understand their routines. All right, let's see what some of you are answering. So a lot of you think we should observe how older generations spend their day, as well as survey older and younger generations to understand their daily routines. Okay. We'll continue to have you respond here. This is a UX design process in 5 steps. The first step is to learn more about your users, right? This is kind of what we're trying to do with our poll here. This is done by conducting user research in a variety of different formats, which can include the following: one-on-one user interviews, contextual inquiries, which is when a user experience designer observes a user in their natural environment. It can include task analysis, which is assessing the steps required for users to complete a task. It could be sharing surveys with users to gain quantitative data and insights. It could result in affinity mapping, which is synthesizing all of your research about your users to identify patterns and themes. And it can also be a competitive analysis, which is evaluating how your competitors reach users. If we look back at the questions from our poll that we just had, actually all of them are the right answer, right? All of these different things here could be ways. The first thing we could do for user research, okay? We could interview older and younger generations. We could spend time observing older generations, which would be the contextual inquiries we just talked about. And we could survey older and younger generations as well. However, I do want to note, while you can probably send a Google form to younger generations, you might need to visit estate void decks and community centers to survey older generations. Okay, so you're going to have to think of the different ways to reach your users with your survey. Okay. For today's session, we're going to focus on user interviews, which is the most important qualitative research activity that user experience designers will use to gain insights about their audiences. Okay. Conducting user interviews teaches us about our users' habits, behaviors, and preferences, allowing us to identify their wants, needs, frustrations, pain points, and hopefully a potential solution or two along the way. Between our older and younger generations, our goal is to discover shared connections or insights that we can use to create a solution. Remember when we said user interviews were a skill? That's because it's actually difficult to ask good questions that lead to meaningful data. rather than biased or relatively useless results. Recently, I started using an iceberg visual to teach my students how to conduct an interview. And here's the visual that I shared with them. On the surface of the iceberg, what we see is what people say in response to scripted questions. Below the surface of an iceberg, what is hidden is what people reveal when you ask why. When it comes to conversations, people often lead with superficial answers. If we simply record those responses and move on, we won't really get any new insights. If you want people to reveal their motivations and feelings, you need to ask more and show genuine interest. This is the hardest part of an interview, but the most rewarding for both parties. Now we're going to learn how to structure a good question. Okay. So here's two questions I have right in front of you here, and we've got a poll for this. Which do you feel is the better question? All right, I'll wait a little bit to see which question all of you think. Wow, a lot of you, 80% of you feel that question number 2 is the better question. That's actually right. Tell me about your daily routine is the better question because it's open-ended, right? Questions that are geared towards yes or no answers limit the data you'll get and usually reflect your personal bias or hopes for what the user wants. If you were to ask someone, do you like to watch TV every day? They might answer that yes or no. Or if they don't like to watch TV every day, you might actually not get anywhere with them, right? You might not get any responses. However, if you ask someone to tell me about your daily routine, it's open-ended and it allows them to tell you what they want to tell you, right? Here's another question. We have a new poll for this one as well. Which is the better one? How often do you spend time with your family? Or when was the last time you had a conversation with your family? Let's see what you think. This is evenly matched here. Wow. All right. When was the last time you had a conversation with your family is actually the better question because it focuses on a specific instance, which is what you really want to do with your questions. Okay. People have a hard time accurately saying what they usually do, and it leaves room for them to answer the question as the person they want to be rather than the person they are. For example, if you ask the question, how often do you spend time with your family? Someone might tell you they actually spend time with their family every week because that's what they aspire to do, but they really haven't seen their family in the months because of the pandemic. Okay, so asking them a specific instance of when was the last time you had a conversation with your family will eliminate that idea of someone telling you what they think you want to hear or what they usually do, and it'll isolate a moment from which they can actually tell you a story and response. All right. Here's our last choose the better question. And we have another poll for this one. What are some of your favorite pastime activities? And what are some of your pastime activities? Let's see which ones you feel is the more effective question. All right, so a lot of people are leaning towards question number 1. Right. The answer is actually 2. If you chose what are some of your what are some of your favorite pastime activities, then that's a leading question. Okay, leading question in the sense of it encourages your interviewees to only include favorites in their response. Okay, so there might be some pastime activities that your users have that are not necessarily their favorite. Okay, so if you lead with favorite, then they're only going to tell you some of them, and you won't find out which ones might be frustrating, right? Or which ones might not be desirable. Okay, and if you do that, you won't figure out the real problem. Okay, and you really want to make sure that you get to the real insights. So avoiding leading questions is the key. Okay. So if we were to prepare our interview with younger and older generations, you would want to create an interview script like what we have here. You want to ask powerful, unbiased questions, but it's a challenge to do that. Okay. The better your questions are, the better your answers and insights you can get from your users. So the goal is to focus on open-ended, non-leading, and specific questions. And again, this is really challenging to do, but as long as you practice, you'll get better over time. Okay. When you're conducting an interview, it's important to follow the conversation rather than your script. So even though we have 4 questions listed for each interviewee in our example, it's possible you may only get to 1 or 2 questions. And if that's all you do, that's okay. The reason it's okay is because, do you remember the iceberg we showed a few slides earlier? You want to ask why, right? By asking why, you get underneath that iceberg. So that might be one of the only reasons you get through 1 or 2 questions is because you asked why a few times. So as an example, let's take the question, tell me how you spend your free time. Okay. Repeatedly asking why can surface the cause of a problem and point you towards the right solution. Right? So here we go with tell me how you spend your free time. I don't do much productive things in my free time. Why? I spend my free time playing video games. Why? Most of my friends are playing the same game. Why? We enjoy hanging out together online. Why? We want to stay connected with each other, and I'm not motivated to go out. Do you notice the difference in responses from the first why to the last why? One question has allowed you to learn a number of things about the interviewee. They consider themselves unproductive. They like to play video games. They spend time online to socialize with friends. And they want to stay connected with these friends, but they may be an introvert or antisocial because they're not motivated to go out. Right? If you were to identify that an interviewee may be an introvert or antisocial, that's not enough, right? That's an assumption on your part that needs to turn into an insight, right? So you may need to continue asking additional whys to find out from the interviewee. All right, so we like to say the 5 whys are your friend. If you can group 5 whys in your interview, that's a really good thing to do. So let's imagine we interviewed a handful of older and younger people and heard these insights. All right, so this is the younger generation. I only get to see my grandma once a month for dinner because I have such a hectic school schedule. I feel awkward communicating with the elderly because of language barriers, and they often don't understand what I'm saying. I sometimes run out of ideas to do with my grandparents because I feel that we don't share anything in common. By asking why, you might arrive at these insights. So we can summarize our younger generation as having a hectic schedule. There's an awkwardness in communication due to language barriers, and a lack of sharing common interests is also a barrier to connecting with older family members. Okay. Perhaps we would have gotten these insights from our older generation. I'm passé to ask for help and refuse to be a burden to my children and grandchildren. I feel sad that my grandson, boy, doesn't talk to me when he is at home. He's always on his phone or computer. I enjoy seeing young children playing at the playground as it reminds me of my childhood. So we can take these insights and we can summarize them as seniors feel like a burden, as well as digital distractions prevent them from connecting with family members. While one interviewer mentions positive feelings associated with childhood. Okay, so these are insights that we might use to help us come up with a solution. Now that we have gotten our insights, we can move to the next process stage and start to define the problem in the form of a problem statement. A problem statement is defined as a high-level description of core unsolved problems the intended users of your site, app, or system currently experience. Why do we create problem statements? They help us summarize and align our user research findings with our stakeholders. Once we've turned our observations and assumptions into insights, we have a better and clearer picture of what the problem is from our user's perspective. Secondly, developing a problem statement helps us summarize our user research and insights into a concise statement for all stakeholders. Again, user experience designers are often considered conductors of product design because they are working on so many different disciplines, from user research to problem solving to design to usability testing. They often know what's happening, and they're responsible for making sure that everyone on the team is in agreement or alignment with understanding what's happening, right? What's happening at any given moment of the project, who our users are, what our solutions are, and our recommendations. Okay. User experience designers often use one of these two problem statement templates, with the main difference in a few words. Okay. The normal structure is user needs what because of the insight versus user needs what so that they can have that insight. Okay. Either one of these templates can be used, they're interchangeable, but it's up to the preference of the user experience designer. Okay. When you come up with the problem statement, you want to make sure it's written from the perspective of the user. This is where you need to be able to empathize with them. You need to be able to feel the challenges, right, that they're having with a product or service. Okay. Another helpful thing to think about is when you describe what a user needs, you need to think about what it is, not how it's going to work. And you need to use verbs, not nouns. In the case of the younger generation, we can come up with the following problem statement. Younger generations need a way to communicate with seniors because they don't know how to spend quality time without awkwardness and language barriers. Okay. Note that the user or persons are in yellow, the goal or insight is in green, and the user need is in gray. Now we can look at the older generations and propose a problem statement for them. Older generations need a way to feel included and engaged because they are often ignored and don't know how to express their needs. Here are the two problem statements side by side. Now that we have them, it's time to come up with a solution that addresses both of their needs. Okay. When we think about our childhood, games often come up as a shared family memory. Personally, I remember my dad teaching me to play card games, watching my grandmother play mahjong on weekends, and all the different games I played with my cousins in the backyard and my sister before bedtime. And games actually provide quite a few benefits. Games are social. As mentioned previously, they help recall memories. Games can tell a story. They don't require much language to play. For many, they can be an entry point into using digital technology. It is also an effective way to help seniors maintain their mental acuity. And best of all, games are inclusive across generations, language, and ability differences. So that's going to be the solution we want to think about as we enter the next phase of user experience design, which is idea generation. During the idea generation phase, you do rapid sketching. Okay. Rapid sketching is something that user experience designers do all the time to get ideas on paper. The key is that you're sketching what the user will be experiencing, not listening to what the tool does or writing down features. Rapid sketching often starts by folding a piece of paper into a series of squares. It could be 4 squares, 6 squares, 8 squares. The goal is to sketch, not write, 4 different solutions for the user, dependent on spending no more than 1 minute on each sketch. Okay. At this point, ideation is about quantity of ideas, not quality of ideas. Okay. At this point, some of you might say that you can't draw. To you, I say that if you can draw the visual alphabet, which is listed here, then you can draw shapes and combine them to create a wireframe sketch. Okay. Here's 4 sketches I made for a game app that I imagine will fit on an iPad. Right. For this sketch activity, I decided to explore the layout of the homepage, how users would navigate through available games. Okay. After you finish your sketches, you'll choose one direction from which to make a prototype. Okay. Right. So this is the next phase, making a prototype. A prototype is an early version of your design that you create with the purpose of getting it in front of a user for usability testing. Right. Why is it so important that we get our ideas in front of users? There's something called Sturgeons Law. Sturgeons Law says that 90% of everything is crap. By testing a prototype, we can identify the crap early on, and then we can revise and recalibrate our idea to match what users want. A natural question that comes out now at this point when we're talking about prototypes is, do I need to know how to code? Right? The answer is nope. You can make a prototype without any coding skills. User experience designers have tools like Sketch and Figma to prototype, and some people use paper prototypes, even the most experienced designers. You definitely don't want to spend time coding anything early on in the design process. Right? Remember that 90% of everything is crap, so don't waste your time. Think about using paper to start. Okay. At General Assembly, user experience design instructors use Sketch or Figma. Also, we don't teach you how to use it as much as support your application to projects. Much like an accounting class, the professor doesn't teach you how to use Excel. It's expected you have basic knowledge. Figma is free, so you can download Figma tomorrow if you'd like and start playing around with it. Once you've chosen your idea from a rapid sketching session, it's time to create additional sketches to build out the overall user experience. What users will see when they engage with your mobile app, in this case. Right? Like your initial sketches, it's important to give yourself a time limit so you don't overthink your design. Just put pen to paper and don't stop drawing. We usually say, take about 10 minutes to sketch out your ideas on paper. I was able to create 6 slides in 10 minutes, right? And as I mentioned before, I decided to create an iPad app. So what you see, number 1, I started by creating a game carousel, which is what I originally designed, on the homepage, which users can move through by swiping left or right. When they find the game they want to play, they select play, which is listed underneath the big image. Screen 2 shows after they select a game, players must be chosen for the game. At this point, I'm assuming the players are in the same room and have created a profile. Although the design can still work for an online game. But if I'm trying to create meaningful social connections, I want them to be in the same room. For number 3, once players are chosen, an optional tutorial appears. Players can swipe through to learn how to play the game or select ready to play. Right. So if you notice this prototype sketches that I drew, all of them are shapes. Right? A lot of circles, bad looking circles here, bad rectangles. But it's all about just making sure you have visual representation of what you want. And I have words used sparingly here as well, too. Here's the next set of slides. Number 4, player 1 moves, right? So this is the first person who moves. While they're moving, a question prompt appears on the screen, encouraging the players to have a conversation. These questions would be randomly chosen by the system from a collection of different themes that resonate with older and younger generations, right? We want to create meaningful social connections. So we're trying to create a way to facilitate those connections, right? Of course, we need more interviews to figure out what themes we need to identify for older and younger generations, right? Think about it as an icebreaker that can be displayed in different languages. Screen number 5 is when player 2 moves, and it shows another question prompt. Okay. Finally, screen number 6 is the winner screen appearing along with the play again or new game option. Right. So this is my 10-minute paper prototype. Once you've got your paper or digital prototype, you want to get it in front of users to start testing it. Now it's time to test your prototype. Okay, and I believe there's a poll for this one here. In this step, user experience designers conduct usability testing to evaluate how effective their solution is in meeting user needs and expectations. In the photo example, a paper sketch is taped to the front of an iPhone to simulate the experience. Alternately, an interactive prototype can be built in Sketch or Figma, allowing users to view the experience in its native format, whether that's a desktop, tablet, or smartphone. Both options can be quite effective as it comes down to how the user experience designer facilitates the test. To kick off the test, we've created a poll for you to decide on a usability task. All right, so when you do a usability test, you always give users a task to complete, and you watch them do that. So let's see what task you feel would be really good to start with. Show me how you would start a new game of Kongkok with the senior partner. Show me how you would change the application language to display Chinese text. Show me how you would launch the Mahjong game tutorial. Or show me how you would add a friend to play a game. So a lot of you are leaning towards the first one. Show me how you would start a new game of Kongkok with the senior partner. Actually, there's no wrong answer for these usability test tasks. They're all the right answer. But what we see in the first one, which a lot of people chose, is the first one might be considered a primary task. Right? That's one of the main tasks that we want to test because it's actually about starting a new game. Whereas the other 3, which is changing the application language, launching a tutorial, and adding a friend, are maybe secondary tasks that you would like to test. But the primary one here is show me how you would start a new game with the senior partner. Okay. So why do we test prototypes? The goal of testing prototypes is to discover our users' expectations. Right? That's key. We want to know if what we're designing works for them. And the best way to understand that is to show them and ask them for their critique. Okay. We also want to learn why certain problems are happening. Right? You have multiple usability testers. You might realize that 2 or 3 of those testers are having the same challenge with a particular task. From that, you can build it as a pattern and figure out what is the best solution. Okay. And this is part of identifying changes required to improve performance and satisfaction. Okay. most of all, usability testing is a cheap and easy way to get actionable feedback. Right? You want to make sure that the things you hear from your users are things you take seriously and decide you want to update. Okay. So here's a few usability testing tips to consider. Right? Before I go through these tips, two of the key things you want to do is you want to make sure participants are comfortable. Right? You want to make it a situation where they can just feel really comfortable and conversational with you. Right? And if you're recording the session, you want to make sure you ask for permission. You want to tell participants you are testing the product, not them. We found that's a really important distinction to make to help users, usability testers feel comfortable. And you want them to focus on explaining what they think is happening, not how they would want to fix it. Okay. This is also an opportunity to ask why something is. Okay. When you have usability testers explaining different things or challenges they're dealing with, it's really important not to interfere when they're responding to your question or trying to figure out how to complete a task. Okay. It'll ruin your test and add bias if you tell them what to do rather than let them struggle and let you know they can't figure out what to do next. Okay. And finally, during usability testing, if someone asks you a question, instead of responding with the answer, you can boomerang their question back to them. So if somebody says, should I click on this link? You can say, do you think you should click this link? The reason why you want to do this is you want to make sure that you don't provide them too much information or it will bias their responses or actions. And the goal of usability testing is to uncover pain points. And I've never done a usability test for a client project that didn't uncover any pain points. Okay, if you didn't uncover any pain points in a usability test, you probably need to try again. Right? All of the students that I've worked with all come up with pain points. So you're not going to get it all right in the beginning. Right? You will always get something wrong, but the idea is if you conduct a really good usability test, people will feel comfortable telling you about those pain points. And then you'll be able to reflect on it and make the appropriate changes. Right? Some pain points could be location of a button. It could be instructions that people expect to be on the page. It could be small text sizes. It could be the use of a particular icon. So it could be a variety of any different thing. Okay, but user experience designers are expected to reflect on these learnings and change the prototype based on user feedback and user experience design best practices. Okay, so let's imagine I went through usability testing for this game tablet app, and here's what I came up with. Right, so this is a digital format of those sketches. Right? Ideally, I would create digital versions of all the pages required to complete a task or two and run through another round of usability testing before sharing it with the design and technology teams to produce. Okay, some little changes you might notice here is that in the top right corner, I've added the opportunity to add multiple languages here. Right, in the case that you have a senior partner who needs a different language than you can have multiple languages. You also see that the play button is part of the image now, and we've got images of the two players in the top right corner of each section of this game display. And then you also have the Western spelling of Kongkok, and then you've got the Chinese version of that as well. Okay, so those are considerations that I made based on the idea of usability testing and the types of things that would make it easier for people to use the experience. Okay, so our final section, how do you become a user experience designer? Okay, so this is probably not a surprise, but the demand for user experience designers is not set to go away anytime soon. even though we're talking about mobile and digital experiences here on this page, as well as throughout this presentation, we already know that UX design is not just about websites and apps. It's all about product design and interaction, right? User experience designers need to be part of those product design opportunities, right? In 2020, the average American spent more than 4 hours a day interacting with their phone, right? So our projection for this year is about 4.5 hours a day. And I'd imagine that Singapore is somewhere around the same amount. So UX designers will continue to be in demand in the mobile world. In 2019, WhatsApp was the most downloaded app globally with almost 900 million downloads, followed by TikTok with nearly 725 million. All of the brands listed here on this data screen, as well as others, will need UX designers to ensure their applications continue to surprise and delight their users. If we think locally, as a job opportunity in Singapore, user experience design is ranked number 3 in high-paying jobs for creative types. In this past August, there was over 7,000 job listings available on LinkedIn. Okay, user experience designers can be creative and build things. There's a lot of growth potential, especially in the Singapore market. User experience design is maturing as a responsibility and as a professional job. And if you become a user experience designer now, you can shape that direction. Okay. The other great thing about user experience design is you don't have to have a 4-year degree. Most user experience designers didn't start in UX design. I actually was a literature major in college, and I was a product manager for 10 years before I moved into user experience design. And a lot of the students I have are from retail roles, marketing roles, finance roles. Okay, so the idea is that you can start anytime, right? From a salary perspective, user experience designers in the US can start at about over 60,000 annually and above for entry-level positions. Okay, so it pays pretty well. From a skill set perspective, we like to say that user experience designers are T-shaped as they're required to understand the fundamentals across various disciplines, right? So along with these skills here on user experience design, some user experience designers have business and design experience to complement their skills. So roles within the UX field can fall on a spectrum. Some roles have a more generalist focus, which would require you to be able to do a lot of different roles that we've seen earlier, while others specialize in a given skill set. Like you can become a content strategist or a prototyper. Okay? At General Assembly, we provide students with a generalist perspective, understanding that our graduates will often move into a specialist role in the first 3 to 5 years of their career. It's possible that some UX/DI students will identify a specialist interest during the course. For example, they might decide they want to focus on user research, information architecture, or prototyping. Well, we're in support of this. We still require students to have a well-rounded understanding of UX in order to graduate. All right. So if we take a look at a specialist skill set, someone might decide after understanding user experience foundations, they might want to focus on research. And as they focus on becoming a user researcher, they would uncover crucial insights about users or customers that inform design decisions. They might practice a diverse set of research methods and approaches. They might create competitive analysis. They might own the user interviews, the key learnings. In recent years, the request for UX researchers has increased, and there are more and more user research focused roles available, and including Singapore. If we were to take a look at all of these different opportunities as a researcher, architecture, interaction, usability, visual designer, and content, they would come to life in these different roles here. All right, we have the last poll question. Hung, do you mind putting that up? We'd like to know which role you personally are interested in learning more about. So we've already talked a little bit about what a user researcher does and what a UX generalist is. If you're an information architect, you would focus on the organization of content and navigation systems. You'd pay attention to the way users approach organizing content, and you'd simplify complex systems of information. If you're an interaction designer, you would develop the user interface of an experience and define how it responds to user input or other behaviors. And you would focus on meeting user goals by communicating affordance. That is a principle by Don Norman, and it's how people understand to use things based on instinct. If you were a visual designer on a design team, you would combine interaction with branding and visual detail. You'd apply design principles to deliver a pleasant visual experience. And a lot of your decisions would focus on color, imagery, graphics, and typography. Right. For those of you who have decided to focus on content strategy, you would emphasize how information is communicated and focus on the role words play in shaping online experiences. You curate product content to the needs of your audiences. You would create content which may include copy. It might be media like videos or podcasts. It might include images as well as social media. Right, so those are all the different roles. Usability specialists would be responsible for conducting a lot of the usability tests and keeping an eye on usability best practices. So they'd be able to communicate that amongst the team as well as the client. All right, let's see what roles everybody here is most interested in. So we've got a lot of people who want to be UX generalists at this point, which is really great. We've got a lot of people who want to be content strategists or have an interest in usability specialization, information architecture, and interaction design. The goal for everyone to start, though, is to be a UX generalist, right? It's to understand how all of these 6 different disciplines come together to benefit a brand to create emotional user experience for users. Okay. All right. So Hung, would you like to take over with these final slides we have here?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for bringing us through. So hi, everyone. I'm just popping back here to just share a little bit more about some of the UX design related courses that we have coming up in case you are very impressed with this session and you'd like to, consider this as one of your career switch for the next step of your career. So in terms of the courses that we do offer them in 2 formats, which is part-time and full-time. So in case you're wondering what are the differences between part-time and full-time courses, I'm here to tell you all about that. So maybe moving on. Just in terms of the difference between the 2 formats. So in terms of the immersive or what we call full-time courses here, they are basically 12-week full-time course that is, very intensive, and we meet Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. For you to, grab all of the foundational UX courses and also work away with a couple of different projects that you can put on your portfolio to then land a job in UX design itself. We also do offer it in a 24-week part-time flexible courses. So these are for people who might not be able to commit fully to a 3-week full-time course just yet. You still want to hold a full-time job, just in case you may find that this is not the right one for you or for financial reasons. You can also join us for a 24-week part-time flexible courses. The goal for this is for you to work away with the exact same skill set, exact same knowledge, and the same number of projects as the full-time course, just in a much more flexible way in a 24-week format. And in case you don't want to become a UX designer fully, maybe you are managing people who are UX designers, or you just want to pick up this very helpful skill for yourself, you can also join us for a part-time course. So for part-time course, of course, the intensity is not as great as full-time course. You're not meant to make a complete career switch to UX design. You just want to pick up the skills, then you can join our part-time courses, and these are usually in a 10-week format or a 1-week accelerated format. Every course is for beginner level. There is no prerequisite for any of these courses. Right, so just sharing some of the dates that we have coming up in case you are keen in terms of the full-time course. We do have 2 cohorts that are coming up in November. We have one that is full-time from 8th November to 11th February. So as you can see, it's roughly like a 12-week format. And then we also have a flexible course that's from 30th November to 11th of June. next year. So as you can see, this is not as intensive. So you meet 3 times a week, either on Tuesday, Thursday, and Wednesday, and also the full day on Saturday. This is why it is spread out in a much longer time frame, 24 weeks. And in case this is not your cup of tea, you want to try it out in a part-time format first, you also do have a cohort that is actually starting next week. So if you are keen on that, do let us know very quickly, and we can help you enroll in that course as well. Right, and moving on, so just in case you are not ready for a full-time or part-time course just yet, we also, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the session, we also do have shorter workshops. So these are usually 2.5 hours to 6-hour boot camp. So for example, if you like this session and you want to take a session on customer journey mapping or user research methods specifically, for example, or you want to go through a much more in-depth intro to UX design bootcamp, that's 6 hours, then of course do join us for our shorter remote workshops as well. Everything is on our website, ga.co. I will also pop that in the chat later, but you can use this discount code over here, try GA25 to take 25% off all of our first workshop. Right, and last but not least, I know that I share a lot of information, but if you have any questions at all, you can drop us a note at Singapore_admissions at ga.co, and one of our admissions producer will be able to get back to you and guide you through the course that would be most relevant and beneficial for your career aspirations.